to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
Peaceful protest.
Peaceful protesters.
Peaceful protest.
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 Good evening. Today is the 5th of June, 2021. I'm Robert Cressionnie.
I'm John Gatsis.
And thanks for joining us for America in Danger. Feel free to give us a call at any point in the show.
Please.
We are always willing to take calls and hear a different point of view or discuss our point of view, either one. But today in history, actually tomorrow in history, is the anniversary of D-Day. Now, I think most people remember what D-Day is. They haven't cut that completely out of the history classes
They're
yet.
trying.
They're trying.
Right.
They certainly want to. But that's the day in 1944 when more than 160,000 Allied troops landed along a 50-mile stretch of heavily fortified French coastline to fight Nazi Germany on the beaches of Normandy, France.
Right.
General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was commander of the European theater at the time, called the operation a crusade in which we will accept nothing less than full victory. Now, there's something to be said for that attitude, because we have a lot of things now that we really don't want to win. We just all want to play together. And,
Right.
now, under the previous presidential administration, we were playing to win. We were playing to win for the United States and for the people of the United States.
And that's the crime for which Donald J. Trump is being
That's the
persecuted.
crime for which he's being persecuted.
That's right.
Absolutely is. There were 9,000 Allied soldiers killed or wounded that day.
It really wasn't. I mean, first of all, if you were on one of those transport ships, it was almost a certain death sentence. I mean, when that gate lowered, you were going to be shot and killed
Yeah.
if you were in any of those first 10 waves
Yeah.
that went in.
Yeah.
And those 18 to 25-year-old, boys.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I really don't think, and I might even include myself in this, that people have the stomach for that. I mean,
No,
in this
no.
nation, I mean,
Not
that
this
was a really,
day and time.
really tall order.
You got that right. To be sent to a beach facing machine gun fire.
Right, from
heavily
pillboxes that were
fortified position.
absolutely. And I noticed, it was interesting because I noticed they really didn't spend much time on Memorial Day, or they haven't spent any time discussing D-Day. And I think in the current environment, one of the reasons they're doing that is that even among those on the left, our participation in World War II is always viewed as a good thing and a virtuous thing, but they're so busy trying right now to delegitimize the United States in every way. They don't even want to acknowledge something that heretofore everybody acknowledged was a good thing and a worthy and positive thing the United States did for the world. So I noticed a palpable de-emphasis of these facts
myself.
very recently. I mean, it was noticeable to me anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that anything we've done that's over and above toward any of these issues is being largely ignored.
Being largely ignored and written out of the history books.
All of our founding fathers, all of the people that we looked up to as role models.
Well, they're
throughout
being outright vilified.
They are
Right.
being vilified.
I actually
absolutely.
read where students of a certain age now believe that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in response to our bombing of Hiroshima. I mean, now that is, if that doesn't represent dereliction of duty in teaching history and the history of this country, because that's relatively recent history. I mean, we're of an age that we kind of grew up knowing that history because our parents would have talked about it, but really, there's no reason people shouldn't know the basic facts of the wars that this country has been involved in, especially in the 20th century.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
But it's very important though that even though you don't know that you know how to make a TikTok video.
Well, that's right. That's correct.
Or the song, the words to every filthy rap song out there. That's very important.
That's key
We don't
stuff.
need to remember history, but as long as you can do that,
That's right.
you're good to go.
That's right. Or what's going on with the Kardashians?
The Kardashians. That's right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely.
Important stuff.
Important stuff. That's the mentality that we have in the schools today.
Yeah.
And that is so counterproductive to anything that this country stands for or ever did.
Well, it certainly doesn't help build a thriving and coherent nation.
No, it does not.
Now,
It does not.
to be fair, I really wouldn't care about any of that if those people weren't encouraged to vote.
Right, right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
That's, I mean, I think throughout this country's history, probably it was a relatively small fraction of the population that really drills deep into these issues. You got to be interested and you got to be motivated. And frankly, part of the genius of what the founders set up is they set up a fundamentally decentralized system that allows people to pursue their own interests in their own lives without having to be worried about those. People shouldn't have to be spending a lot of their time concerned about what those nitwit authoritarians in Washington are trying to do to us. You know, it's more important that you go spend time worrying about what the nitwits at your local town council are trying to do to you, because those guys you can actually go get a hold of and jerk a knot in their head if you have to.
Yeah.
You know, getting an audience with your congressman or your senator, virtually impossible.
It's difficult.
You know, but if I really desperately wanted to visit with the mayor of Raleigh, for example, I'm sure I could find a way to do that and at least make my voice heard. But they've got everything backwards now to where everything is from the top down, and it's all very centralized and administered from a super state in Washington. And it's not good.
And that was the whole point of the 10th Amendment, to say that these powers enumerated in the Constitution are for the federal government, and that's where we draw the line. Everything else is reserved to the states.
Or the people.
Or the people.
Right.
That's exactly right. And even the states overstep in many of those areas.
Absolutely.
But they left it that way. They didn't go into great detail on the state level because, as you said, we can all drive up to Raleigh one afternoon and go walk the halls of the General Assembly.
You sure
They
can.
haven't locked the doors yet.
I've done it.
You can go walk the halls of the General Assembly, and you can find your elected official.
That's correct. You can shake his hand, and you can, harangue him or compliment him or get his ear.
Look him in the eye and
That's
ask him why he did this or why he did not do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. On a national level, we have seen more and more evidence coming out about the Wuhan labs, and we know that the Chinese communists are very fond of lying. That's their operating procedure.
Well, it is. That's the fundamental tenet of the left and Marxists in general. In fact, they'll say the end justify the means, and so they will use whatever means they need to achieve their end, and that almost always is a healthy dose of lying.
Absolutely.
Includes a healthy dose of lying.
Lies and deception.
Absolutely.
Well, President Biden, who I firmly believe is a Chinese asset in the White House. I'm sorry, there's too much evidence leading up to his taking the White House to not consider him a Chinese asset.
That's right.
Well, the left, the media left, is doing the best that they can do to cover for him.
Right.
And they have just really jumped on this thing with him banning 59 of the Chinese companies.
Like somehow he's rising to the occasion. And this is all theater.
Strong.
Yeah.
It's all theater.
Yeah.
Because if you look at what he's doing with the other hand, and this is a pattern, we talk about patterns all the time. This is a standard strategy that's done time and time again in government. And once you learn to recognize it, you begin to pick up on it very quickly. What he's doing, he's saying, look, right here, look. I'm banning Chinese companies, 59 of them. What's he doing with this hand? He's saying, you know what, and I'm also going to ban the mining of strategic minerals in this country. I'm going to ban the production of oil and gas in this country. Now, what does that do? Where does that push that industry to?
Clearly, CCP, China.
It pushes it to China, Russia, and the Middle East.
Moreover, a subtlety with the banning of these 59 corporations or companies or Chinese companies, really it's just the Chinese military is what it is.
Right.
I mean, for people who aren't crystal clear on how business works in China, you don't have a business in China in which you're not a partner with the Chinese military and the government. But what this particular edict of the president's does is that it may ban business interactions with those 59 companies, but it completely eliminates the restrictions on their subsidiaries. Okay, so in effect, it does nothing. And in fact, it may even make things worse.
That's right. And then on top of that, you throw this in on top of that. The administration of this banned list is going to none other than Janet Yellen at the Treasury Department.
I missed that.
Now, Janet Yellen will administer the exceptions to this list. And we all know that Janet Yellen is a dyed-in-the-wool globalist.
Yeah.
She has just met with the G7 countries, and she's pushed them into an agreement to support a global corporate income tax.
Right.
Now, as I said in a previous show, what that does is that creates a static playing field for these corporate entities who can then devote their resources, rather than competition with other companies, they can devote their resources now to owning politicians and administering the goings-on in their districts.
Right.
Hence the whole rollerball analogy the other night.
Right, right. Well, for those who missed it, last show we got off on a tangent about a movie that a particular favorite of mine from the 70s, Rollerball, which really quite prophetic in its prediction of the future. And I would encourage people to watch it just for yucks. It's really there's a lot of analogs from the characters in that movie that translate quite well to today, I think.
There absolutely are, and you see a lot of things happening in that are happening today.
Sure do.
It just really.
Well, really,
can't miss them.
Right. Well, really, what that movie is about is a corporate fascist state in which everybody's basic needs are met, but all decision making is left to an elite,
Yeah.
and individual liberty and autonomy and self-determination are virtually gone.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I think in the past we all thought that it wasn't possible to achieve that and still have material wealth. But I think what the architects of this world order that we're looking at right now, I think they believe they have reached the point where they can do that, and they may have, to our detriment, to the detriment of liberty. But really, productivity and production of food and basic goods and services is really at such a high level, they can distribute a lot of that stuff almost for free to people and keep them on just that little bit of a fix, to keep them happy and dumb. And I think they view the China model. They're looking at the China model. They're saying, well, China has kind of done that, although the majority of China is still very third world and backward.
Oh, absolutely.
But they see that as something that is applicable here, and that's why I think there's this rush to embrace China and its methodology, and they're doing it. But very, very. I mean, really, you don't even have to dig very deep to find them. I think it was Ezra Klein wrote this week in Vox that what's wrong with being more like China? Now, that to me that's scary stuff.
That absolutely is,
You
when
know.
you consider that China has murdered hundreds of millions of its own citizens.
People, that's right.
And if you think that can't happen here,
Yeah, very
you know what?
naive.
You need to go look at some of the tweets by AOC, Tlaib, and some of the other ones, Nancy Pelosi. Those tweets are very indicative of people who have the Hitler mentality.
Well, or
Given
more
enough
revealing.
power and authority.
Right, but more revealing is to dig into the tweets made by people who work for those people or work in close connection with them, and they're much more strident and violent in their nature. They talk
Absolutely
about
are.
re-education camps, they talk about killing large numbers of people,
Yeah.
they talk about things that would have really shocked us years ago, now unfortunately are less shocking, but shouldn't be.
Pol Pot in Cambodia, he didn't set up death camps. He set up re-education camps.
Right.
And if anyone thinks that re-education camps are not a euphemism for death camps, then you really need to look at how these things have transpired throughout history.
Yes.
Because they are ultimately a death camp.
Yes.
If you get sent to a re-education camp, in all likelihood, it's the last time you'll be seen or heard from.
Right.
Once you serve out your useful, productive output in that camp, if you don't die of disease or some other ailment in there,
Or torture.
or torture, exactly. So don't get comfortable with these people who you think are just, they're just young, inexperienced, and
And
foolish.
it's rhetoric.
It's
Well,
rhetoric.
Ronald Reagan, who, people can quibble one way or the other about his presidency, but he said some things that really resonated with me, and one of them is that it only takes 1 or 2 generations to completely lose the concept of liberty. It's lost
Yeah.
that quickly.
And we are
I think we're observing
dangerously
that.
close.
You're
We're
right.
dangerously close to that. And with that,
I guess we're dangerously close to a break.
we are. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about more of these things on America in Danger, so stay tuned.
Hey, this is John Woodruff with Premier Equipment Company of Rocky Mountain Infield. You've been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately, you've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by, so come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers, everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff from Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we are back, and we were talking about Biden banning the 59 companies, and how that's really just a sideshow, is what it is. It's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
It's political theater.
And you know, and it works, because I heard somebody say the other day, well, one thing I'm glad is that Biden is pushing back against China.
That's the CNN crowd right there. The CNN, MSNBC. Looks like we have a text. Let me see if this is pertaining to the show, or
Right, or they want you to re-up your prescription, at CVS.
It could be. It could be. All right. This is from a long-time viewer. I say long time because this viewer actually watched when we had the previous show. She happened to have my personal cell phone number. So she's got a question. A statement, really. Let's see what it says. It says, the Constitution assigns 20 duties to the President and the executive branch of government. So anyone that's ever read the Constitution knows that, because it's clearly outlined that there are enumerated powers.
Right.
You might have heard that sometime on talk shows or whatever. They talk about the enumerated powers. These are the powers that are spelled out.
Right. And enumerated literally means numbered. One through. Yeah.
Exactly. It says, none of the powers give the President authority to control the property or the money of the American people. Yet President Biden is on the air these days saying he is going to do away with the suburbs in America. So he's going to eliminate suburbs. I'm not exactly sure how he's going to do that, but that's
I think I know what this is in reference to, yeah.
So where does he get the authority to do that? Seems to me this deals with the right to own private property. It absolutely does. Our officials should live up to the law of the Constitution that they swear an oath to. Isn't that all they are supposed to do? And I would have to agree, absolutely. That is all they are supposed to do.
Yeah, not much argument there. I mean, I'd have to.
I can't argue with that.
Well, the caller clearly has spent a little time
studying the
issues
yes.
themselves.
I would say so. That comes from a very informed individual.
Obviously, because I mean, I don't think most people would know that there are 20 enumerated powers.
Yeah, that's right. I would have had to guess.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I would have given the right answer myself.
I've read it numerous times.
Right.
But that's right. The president has enumerated powers. And that's where his limitations lie.
He's really supposed to be a rather weak executive.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. He's not a ruler.
Right.
He's not a leader.
Not a king.
He's not a king. And I hate when people say, oh, he's our leader. Well,
yeah, I hate that language.
Not really, because if you look at the leader principle, if you go back to that, you really don't want a leader. You want an elected official that's very susceptible to being booted out of office.
Right.
That's what we want.
Well, the structure that the founders put together was very well crafted, very well thought out, based on a keen understanding of human nature. Okay, you had a House of Representatives.
Yep.
Reelected every 2 years. Every one of them is up every 2 years for reelection. They control the purse strings, they control the spending bills, they control the money, and they are the most democratic element of our government.
Right,
We
that's
throw that,
exactly
we
right.
talk about the meanings of these words and what they
Right.
mean. The House of Representatives is the portion of our constitutional republic that is fundamentally democratic. It's direct voting by
Right.
eligible voters
Right.
for these members.
Yep.
They're up in 2 years, so they very much have to respond to the wishes of the constituents. The Senate, on the other hand, most people probably don't know this, the Senate was originally constructed to be elected by the legislatures of their respective states. Each
is
state
correct.
got 2 senators, and the senators are really, the federal senators are supposed to represent the states as states, not the citizens of the
masses,
state.
that's
That's the
right.
job of the House of Representatives. In 1917 or 1913, I guess it was, they passed the 17th Amendment, which changed,
Correct.
where we directly elect our federal senators. Well, they're just glorified House members then.
Right, exactly.
It's really
Exactly.
that
That's
was
what it
one of
appears
the
to be.
major chinks in the armor of our constitutional republic, was to change that structure, and it eliminated to a great degree the huge amount of sovereignty and self-determination that the states as states have. Okay, and those terms are 6 years for a reason. They're a little bit more insulated from the whims of
Right.
the majority, because tyranny of the majority is still tyranny, and the whims of the majority, it can be just as
Yeah.
dangerous as the whims of an all-powerful autocratic minority that has all the guns.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a separate topic.
Right.
But that was the genius of what they put together, and then the president, to circle back. Paraphrase our current press secretary for President Biden, to circle back
Yeah.
to our discussion about the president, he's really supposed to be just a weak executive that administers the outputs, for lack of a better term, of the House and the Senate, and to sign or to yay or nay
Yep.
on the bills that they pass. And
Absolutely.
it's really that simple. All power in government derives from the people, though quite a bit of it is indirect. You say, well, the senator is being elected by the state legislature. Yeah, but you elect your state legislator. So if
Exactly.
ultimately you don't like what your senators are doing, yeah, you can't snap your fingers and make that change overnight, okay, but you can influence, the population can make those changes over time. They can say, yeah, I don't like the way this state is going, I'm going to vote for a different set of state legislators, and then in turn they pick different senators. That was an incredibly brilliant
It was. Absolutely. I agree.
a cocktail for government.
I absolutely
And
agree.
yeah, it's been under assault for such a long time. It almost seems like we're a day late and a dollar short having these discussions. But
Yeah, interesting backstory on the whole 17th Amendment thing.
okay,
They sold the 17th Amendment to the American people, not because there was a problem with that whole system, but because there was a little corruption in a couple states with senators kind of buying their way in, which, that's politics.
inevitable. Human
That's
beings.
Politics.
That's
Human
right.
beings, exactly. So they sold it to the American people and said, oh, we're going to fix that issue. We're going to let the people elect the senators from here on out, and there won't be any corruption whatsoever. in that."
right.
Well, they knew full well what they were doing was tipping the balance
That's right.
of Congress, which is the House and the Senate.
Well, trying to move more towards democracy.
Democracy, right,
Okay,
which is a very dangerous thing.
We talk about that a lot, but that word is not even in the Constitution.
That's exactly right.
And democracy is usually the last step before socialism.
Exactly.
And that's why you hear the left often talk about things like, well, we need to democratize wealth. Well,
Right.
that's just Marxist speak for we need to confiscate and
Confiscate and
redistribute wealth
redistribute, right.
using the majority, using the 5 wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner brand of democracy.
Yeah.
And those are very important concepts that I think people have lost all sight of, and
Yeah,
hopefully,
because those things aren't taught in schools these days.
and they haven't been for a long time.
For a long time. And the interesting thing about democratizing wealth, that whole thing, is, under the theory of it, and what's pushed when these dictators come into power is, well, we're going to distribute it equally to all people.
Right.
What happens is 90% of it is stolen by the dictatorship.
Right, and everybody else is equally poor.
Everyone else lives in equal poverty, and yeah, exactly.
Well, the risk of digressing, I mean, again, that gets into the whole thing. I mean, the very premise, and we talk about accepting the premises of these people, but the very premise that there's a fixed pie, that there's only a certain amount of wealth. Okay, the objective is to create wealth. Okay, you want to create a system where people are encouraged to actually generate and create wealth, and that in turn enables more people to have more. You can't avoid the fact that some people are going to have more than others, and in fact, you kind of want that. I mean, you need those disparities, okay, to create incentive for others. And frankly, I just, stated simply, I'd rather be a poor person in America than the recipient of egalitarian largesse from any of these socialist rat holes.
I agree.
I mean, Venezuela, I mean, I've been there, and I was there in the late 90s, and it's a shame because it was really beautiful. There's a lot of nice things, but it was right on the eve of the takeover of Chavez and the communists. And now I wouldn't set foot in that place.
No.
Yeah, dangerous and destitute and controlled by a handful of people who get all the things. It's a military dictatorship in every way that you think of it as being.
Absolutely is. Absolutely.
And that's what people are calling. They're calling for those same policies here. They really are. I mean, they really are calling for those very same policies to be instituted here.
Yeah, and the thing about socialism, it has not worked in any nation around the world throughout history. It has never worked. And anyone that says, oh, but what about the Scandinavian democracies? Or what about the Scandinavian socialism?
Well, A, they don't really practice, really, they really don't practice socialism.
That's the thing.
And the other thing is they have rather small, homogeneous populations that largely are roughly equally productive, and so they can tolerate a little more of that. Well, we're just all going to throw in the pot, and they kind of get back what they put in to a certain extent. And you can't have that kind of thing in a country like this, or really any country with a diverse and varied population.
That's right.
You simply cannot.
That's right. Well, if you analyze our population, you'll find that there's a very large demographic of non-productivity. Of the non-productive.
That's right.
Now, I'm not casting aspersions on anyone.
It's not necessarily pejorative.
But that's just the way it is.
That's right.
A large segment of our population will not work, does not work, doesn't want to work.
And yet they eat just fine.
And they hold their hand out just fine when those checks are coming out.
That's right.
Now, you take the small productive segment of the population, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about the whole corporate globalist model here.
For the universal basic income drivers, that kind of thing,
that they want to take that small productive element, and they think that they can manage that and keep that perpetuated, keep that going.
Right.
Because productivity per individual, I heard the other day, is at an all-time high right now.
Yeah.
And that's only if you look at those in the productive category. If you merge everyone else in, then those numbers go down. True.
That's correct.
That cannot be true. It would average much lower. But they want to keep that small productive element by giving them just enough. Just enough. You take as much as you can take, but they still want to work hard and make more.
Right. Well,
and that's their goal. That's what they're pushing for.
And largely through technology and agri-farming and other things, people really don't have to work very hard to achieve a minimum, fairly comfortable standard of living. And I think that the architects of all these plans and these sort of global order machinations that we see, I think they believe we're at a point where we can be productive enough through the use of these things that I just mentioned and give the proletariat, the plebes, enough to keep them happy and controlled. Okay.
That's right. That's what it's all about ultimately, is control.
Again, I reference, rollerball, like that's some big, deep philosophical thing, but it's really, that's exactly, and I don't think they were that movie wasn't intended to convey that message. It was an anti-capitalist movie is what it was. Okay, or at least they thought it was in the day. But what they didn't realize is that, capitalism, really that was a term coined by Marx. I don't use that term because really it's free market economics. Thomas Paine didn't write about capitalism.
Right, that's right. That's right. Capitalism is simply the control of the productive elements.
Right.
In
I mean, the
society.
Chinese are big capitalists.
Yes, they are big capitalists.
Yeah.
They own every means of
Right. They're
production
one
in
big
China.
giant monopoly. It's called the
Exactly.
Chinese Communist Party.
Exactly. And with that, we got to take a little break. So stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
This is Nicholas Bellamy at Premier Equipment. I'm going to talk about the 4540 Mahindra. It's 38 horsepower, four-cylinder engine. The weight of this tractor is 4,000 pounds. This tractor is perfect for bush hogging, distance, small garden, a hunting club tractor. Comes with a 7-year warranty, 2-year bumper-to-bumper, additional 5-year on the powertrain. You can have this tractor for $200 a month, and we have 20 of these tractors in stock. Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
We're back with more America in Danger. Feel free to give us a call.
Yeah, please.
The number's on the screen there, so
Yeah.
give us a shout.
Call us and tell us, that we're full of it. Whatever. I want to hear from some people.
You know, I ran across an article earlier. I thought it was very interesting because Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett is known as the Oracle of Omaha because
Right.
of his ability to pick stocks, which I'm not so sure that it's as much being able to pick good stocks as it is to be able to pick stocks that then become good because he picked
Well,
those
there's a little bit of a
stocks.
self-fulfilling prophecy, but he does have an interesting history, and
Yes, he does.
Berkshire Hathaway is his company, and
He's done well.
yeah,
There's no doubt
and,
about it.
he was famous for saying, "I don't invest in things I don't understand," and so he was famous for investing in things like insurance companies and razor blades and shaving cream and.
And he's done well, but he and Bill Gates, who is an interesting individual, Bill Gates of Microsoft.
Yeah.
Of course, he advocates many, many things.
A lot of
that,
things. Probably out of his depth a little bit, in my
are
opinion.
very much out of his depth. He's into the whole global vaccination thing, the
Yeah.
vaccine thing.
He's very controversial in many circles.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And for good reason.
He's into the whole green thing. He's
Yep.
into the whole satellite tracking of every
Yep.
individual in the world. But they have teamed up and they are looking at what they call a game-changing nuclear power plant in Wyoming.
Very interesting.
It's very interesting because the last nuclear power plant that was built in this country was built in, the 80s?
I don't know. I know they just de-emphasized and they kind of walked away from
Yeah.
them all across the country, which was a big mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. So the
Yeah.
last one was, I know Sharon Harris was still under construction. I believe in the late 70s, early 80s. Someone
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that's when that was put in.
Seems all right.
But they want to put a 345 megawatt sodium-cooled fast reactor with a molten sodium core, which that's beyond my understanding at this point already. But it's supposed to be safer than the old type of.
Right, a next generation
It's the next
reactor.
generation.
Yeah.
And it can generate 345 megawatts, and they can juice it up to right at 500 megawatts. So they've got some flexibility there for power demand up and down, which, solar and wind really don't have that capability.
Well, it's interesting to analyze what's going on there because, typically nuclear power is another boogeyman to the left.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
they,
absolutely.
you
Absolutely. Thank Jane Fonda and Kirk Douglas Jr.
for that stupid movie.
China Syndrome, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of high-profile nuclear accidents. There's never been one in this country. I mean, 3 Mile Island, which happened in 1979, I remember it. Everything worked, and so there was no actual accident. But I wonder if, of course, this is just stream of consciousness thinking here, but I wonder if what's going on here is that these guys know that you can't get to this green renewable energy thing, okay, and replace and supplant all of the fossil fuel that we use right now. You simply, it's not, I mean, the physics doesn't allow it.
Right.
I mean, it's like trying to replace the volume of water in the ocean with, some condensed, with a still and some condensation out of the atmosphere. I mean, you just can't do it. We use a lot of energy, and the whole world relies on that. If you really accept the premise of global warming, which is that carbon dioxide is acting as a greenhouse gas and going to make the earth uninhabitable, and some people claim 12 years. I don't believe any of that. I think that's all, just another hoax. It's just a scam. But that's, a lot of people do believe it.
Oh, they do?
And a lot of these folks claim they believe it.
Got a little autistic.
Oh yeah, the Greta.
Passive aggressive.
Well, but one of the chief virtues of nuclear power, for all of its other purported, detractors, it's carbon free.
Right.
No CO2.
Yeah, no CO2.
Okay.
No CO2.
And France, for example, I think 80% of their grid is from nuclear.
It is.
Okay.
And the sad part about it is they've committed to doing away with them.
Well, I see, and that's
going green. And
right, and that's almost oxymoronic, because if they accept the green premise, first of all, if you really thought that we were on the verge of making the planet uninhabitable due to CO2 emissions, okay, you would embrace nuclear power, even if it were as dangerous as they claim. Because what would be the worst case scenario? Okay, you have one disaster every 5 years, and a few thousand people get affected. Isn't that infinitely preferable to the destruction of the earth and the demise of the human race? And that's what they're telling us. That's what they're telling us is at hand.
Right. They're telling us that the globe is on fire and we're all going to die.
I mean, to me, it's analogous to you're starving, you haven't had a meal in 2 weeks, you've been on a desert island, and somebody presents you with a McDonald's meal, and you say, oh, well, that's not healthy. I can't eat that. I mean, so I think these guys, Bill Gates and Buffett here, they know. They're not dumb.
Right.
I question their virtue, but they're not dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, and they certainly know that if you're going to meet the energy needs of this country in any way, shape, or form, and shift away from traditional fossil fuels, there not many alternatives. But one of them is nuclear.
Right.
And so. Yeah, and I don't know if you saw this, but China apparently has a successful fusion reactor that they're that was in the news this week.
I missed that.
Yeah, and I mean, so we're losing that battle apparently.
Yeah, apparently so.
I'm sure it's with technology that they liberated from us, because they're notorious for stealing.
Well, I was just going to say, how much of that technology did they steal from us?
Well, that's right.
Or how much was given to them?
That's right.
Through joint ventures.
Right.
There are laws in this country that prevent trade in certain defense and security issues, ITAR.
Right, I'm familiar with ITAR.
And yet we allow these joint ventures with universities and Chinese corporations and universities to go on where we know there's a huge transfer of technology.
That's right.
We know this, and yet our administration does nothing. If Biden was going to take a tough stand against China, the first thing he would do, all of the Confucius institutes in these universities would be gone.
Shut down, that's right.
Any professors working on projects who are from China would be gone.
Right, on the first plane back home.
Exactly. All of these Chinese grad students who are here on visas would be gone. You want to take a tough stand, you want to stop the communist Chinese in their tracks, well, you cut their lifeline.
Right. And make no mistake, I mean, the Chinese communists, their objective is to be the world hegemon, the world leader. People think they don't like the United States being the big kid on the block. Wait till the world is dominated by a Chinese empire run by the communists. They're not going to like it much.
No, and we've seen what the Chinese do, not only to their own people, but neighboring nations and minorities in their countries. You want to talk about minority rights in this country? I think we have it pretty good in this country. You go to China, They load you on a freight car. They ship you off to some work compound.
To camp, right.
Never to be seen again.
Well, that's the thing.
Documented. That's not rhetoric. That's not hearsay.
That's right.
Not
That's
conspiracy.
documented fact.
That's documented fact.
Right. And all these cheap devices that people are running around with, and their iPhones and everything, a lot of that stuff is built with slave labor in China.
Absolutely.
And it's really offensive.
Absolutely is. Speaking of devices, Apple made the news here recently. And of course, the mainstream media just completely brushes this aside. But I want to make this point. A few years ago, there were 2 Islamic terrorists who shot up a birthday party.
I remember that in California, right?
In California.
Yeah.
Well, they had iPhones and iPads.
Right, I do remember that.
Well, the federal government wanted to investigate and break into those iPhones and iPads.
Yeah.
Well, Apple promptly said, "No way, Jose."
Well, they were so,
we have got to protect the privacy
they
of our
stood on their
users.
principles.
They
and
stood on their principles. Well, guess what they just did?
I can't wait.
They just turned over their entire database of users to the Chinese communists.
Great.
Now, these are Chinese
users.
These
Yeah,
are not
yeah.
American users.
Right.
But these are Chinese users.
As far as we know.
Which the products are all rage in China.
Right.
As far as we know.
I mean, my theory is whatever it is we do know, it's a million times worse.
It's a million times worse, exactly. They have just turned over the entire database of all of their app users in China to the Chinese Communist government, who wants to assign people a social score so that if you put out a mean tweet like Trump did, your social score will go to 0, your credit cards, your debit cards will all be cut off.
Well, they use that they call it social credit scoring.
Yeah.
Okay, and it can even drill down into incidents where you are perceived as being rude to somebody in a like a transaction at a fast food place, and you get demerits, and it affects your ability to acquire credit and to do all. And that's in play. They're doing that, and they're also parallel to that. I'm not sure I'm going to get the terms right here, but they're doing that with corporations too. They're doing this. I forget what they call it now, but there's a. You're going to see this term increasingly used in discussing whether a publicly traded company is a good investment, and one of their scores is some 3-letter initialism that basically describes social justice, environment, and so forth. And if your score on that determines whether or not these big investment banks and others are going to be willing to. So if you as a corporation don't toe the line, toe the political line, the orthodoxy, okay, you won't be permitted to participate in the higher level financing associated with the banks and the investment banks and so forth.
I do recall seeing something about that.
Yeah.
And we certainly have advocates for that in our federal government, in Congress, in the Senate. In the House and the Senate, we have advocates for that who want to assign those social scores to individuals.
It's really difficult to understand the psychology of these people. I mean, what drives them? What drives these people to want to, I guess they say life is high school, and I guess it is, but I mean, these people are just glorified hall monitors. They want to tell people what to do when they should be minding their own dang business.
I agree, and that's, they claim that, people that want to rule the world are an element of history.
Right.
But we still have plenty of people in this world who want to rule it.
Yeah,
and that's what these people. There's some kind of innate drive.
There's a psychology there
to rule over people and to dictate to people.
That's right.
And the left is filled with them because that type gravitates toward that whole leftist philosophy.
That's right. And in order to implement their leftist philosophy and their utopian vision, they have to resort to coercion because the things that they propose and the things that they believe in are inconsistent with human nature. Okay, so they have to force people to do what they want at the point of a gun.
Absolutely.
And that's why they don't want you and me to own any guns.
That's exactly right. It's not because we'll stage an armed insurrection on the Capitol, which was absolutely preposterous. There was the only one armed were the Capitol Police.
And the only one that died was a protester. That's right.
Yeah, so it's not to engage in an armed insurrection. That's ridiculous. But it's to be able to resist. It's kind of like the shot heard around the world that I showed on one of the early shows. The colonialists showed up to send a message.
Right.
They weren't interested in fighting toe to toe with the British, but they wanted to send a message. We're here. we have guns, and we're going to resist.
Wasn't it Thomas Jefferson who said the tree of liberty needs to be watered occasionally with the blood of tyrants?
With the blood of tyrants,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think I'm paraphrasing there, but I'm close.
That's pretty much close, yes. With that, we got to take a little break, so when we come back, we'll be talking a little bit more about some of these things. So stay tuned for more America in Danger.
Hey, this is John Woodruff of Premier Equipment Company of Rocky Mountain Infield. You've been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately. You've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by. So come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers, everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff from Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, attorney at law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we're back for more America in Danger. We're getting down to the hour here.
Yep.
Give us a call if you want. If you have something you'd like to say, feel free. If you'd like to debate something we said, feel free.
Yeah.
We're always willing.
Yeah, I'm open to, changing my mind about some of these things.
As am I. Anthony Fauci is in the news quite a bit these days.
Right.
His emails were obtained through a Freedom of Information request, a FOIA request. And there's some interesting stuff coming out of those from early on in this whole COVID thing. His posturing on mask wear.
Yeah, well,
On the one hand, he's saying, yeah, wear a mask. On the other hand, in private, he's saying, nah, you don't need to wear a mask.
Well, initially he told everybody don't wear them.
That's what he said initially, and then he came back and changed his tune.
And he said, well, I lied because,
Right,
you destroyed your credibility right there.
They might be in short supply.
And we need it for the healthcare workers.
Yeah, we didn't want a shortage. But at the very same time, he was privately emailing people, telling them, no, you don't need to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. If you're sick, wear the mask. It will stop you from coughing droplets onto people.
Right.
But because it's a virus, the mask isn't going to do anything.
It's like trying to keep mosquitoes out with, hurricane fencing.
Right.
I mean, it's just the physical dimensions make it an absurd exercise.
Exactly. And, I still maintain I have yet to find any city, county, state, nation where the mask mandate made any difference
that should show
on the trajectory of the virus. And you would think that if they work so well, you would see at least a little blip.
One would think.
Instead of just a continuous curve.
One would think there'd be some kind of statistical indication that, look, we instituted the mask, and you can see here that even though cases are going up, we see a dip here, and then it picked an offset, something mathematically that should indicate that there is some effect.
Some blip, and we haven't seen any of that. But not here to debate that.
Right.
Because the mask mandates are going away, so we're all happy about that. In fact, I'd like to stage a mass mask burning at some point here. But Anthony Fauci is in the news today because he basically lied again in testifying before Congress. Unfortunately, he wasn't under oath, so I guess that doesn't count.
Doesn't count. We played that clip on this show.
We did.
The interaction. You're talking about the interchange between him
Fauci and Rand Paul.
Right, Senator Rand Paul, who's an MD, by the way. So he has some ability to speak on this.
Absolutely, on medical issues, absolutely. And there was another exchange with Kennedy out of Louisiana.
Right.
And another exchange with Marco Rubio, which I'm shocked actually because.
Parenthetically, I want to add, have you noticed Marco Rubio seems to be positioning himself as the anti-China, let's give, and I think he's trying to reform his tarnished, gang of it. Right. I don't think it's going to work. And if there's anybody, I don't trust him. I do not trust him. But he is making some of the right noises. But that's a digression there.
Well, let's see. On the determination of trust. Let's see. He's a politician.
Well, already he's lost it.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
don't trust him any farther than I could throw him.
Right. You could throw him probably a little farther than most of them, though. Little guy. then what did Trump call him? Little Marco?
Yeah, and I like to do the water thing.
Oh, yeah. Let's see if I can do that.
We had a bottle handy. We tried to recreate
that. Yeah, that's how.
Anyway, back to Fauci. He's apparently, he knew that money was going to Wuhan.
Right.
To the virology lab.
For gain of function, for effectively gain of function
research.
Right. And maybe define that a little bit.
Yeah. Now, gain of function is tampering with viruses to genetically modify them to be more virulent, meaning the ability of an animal virus to infect a human.
Right, to make them more potent with respect to human
more
infection.
More contagious, more deadly to humans, or more able to transmit to humans.
Right.
And Fauci knew this was going on. There are emails that have come out that show that he knew this was going on.
That's right.
He gave money knowing that the studies were gain-of-function studies. Now, he's tried to say, oh, no, they weren't. If you read the results of the reports, then you'll see that they weren't. Well, the reports came out of China, of course. Now, the studies were done in China under the auspices of the Chinese communists who run that lab.
Well, they're trustworthy.
Yeah. That's like, I don't remember whether it was Rand Paul or Rubio who said, well, do you think they might have spent the money on something they didn't tell you about?
Right. I saw that.
And besides that, if you send a Chinese lab money to do specific,
which I'm going to interject, why are we even doing that?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean,
that's
come on.
absolutely preposterous. But if you send them money, say they present this study, okay, well, we're going to fund that study. We're going to give you money to fund that study. And at the same time, they're studying gain of function over here. But you've sent them money for this. Now, where's the block wall that prevents them from using that money for this study?
Well, there isn't any.
There isn't any.
Right, there is, of course.
There isn't any. It's like giving a wino $5 and he says he's going to go buy a meal, but he goes and buys wine and he says, oh, but I didn't use your $5 to buy the wine.
That's all right. Well, I think the word they use to describe that is fungible. Money is fungible.
Absolutely.
That means that you can use it for, any number of things. And Planned Parenthood tries to pull that scam. We don't use any of the federal dollars that we get on abortion. Right. But you use it to run your operation so that whatever dollars you do get from other sources, you can use for abortion.
Exactly.
So effectively, you're being subsidized by taxpayers to
exactly
perform abortions.
Exactly. Hey, Fauci knew all these things. Fauci was aware of these things. And for us to continue to allow the media, the left mainstream media,
which is redundant.
Yeah, it is. To allow them to continue to hold Fauci up as some kind of national expert and reliable source on these issues is preposterous. I just really, number one, Mr. Fauci has no credibility with me. The FBI has no credibility with me. The Department of Justice has no credibility with me.
All these people have blown their credibility.
The intelligence agencies have no credibility with me, and nor does the federal government or any politician in Congress. They have zero credibility at this point. They have blown that Capitol.
And that's unfortunate because what that does is it makes otherwise fairly deliberate people, it forces them to consider some pretty wild-eyed conspiracy stuff because you cannot trust what these people are telling you when they say something's not true. I mean, the whole Wuhan lab leak theory was a wild-eyed conspiracy theory a year ago.
That's exactly right.
Well, guess what? Now it turns out maybe not. In fact, probably not. In fact, apparently certainly not. And
the mainstream media, it hasn't missed a lick with switching gears, changing lanes, and not even acknowledging that they basically persecuted Donald Trump and anyone
Exactly.
who said anything about Wuhan lab, the Wuhan lab being a possible source for this virus.
Right. Well, and frankly, I'm receptive to all types of scenarios as far where that's concerned. I mean, there's a fairly good case to be made that this was engineered, and purposely let loose. In fact, I just read today, I didn't dig into the details, but you know, there was a ban on gain-of-function research in this country under the Obama administration. But do you know that 11 days before Trump was inaugurated, they lifted that ban?
Interesting.
Which is, okay, you can draw a lot of conclusions from that or none. It might be meaningless, but it's not nothing. I mean, it's worth noting. I mean, it's certainly within the realm of plausibility that this whole thing was cooked up to get rid of somebody. I mean, China was losing the economic war.
They absolutely were.
And they and their deep state collaborators were about to be exposed, and they simply could not have another 4 years, imperfect though he was, of somebody who actually was putting America's interests first. And that's really the bottom line. Whatever else he was, and whatever, you know, I mean, he definitely was not the ideal scholarly statesman. Okay, but frankly, that's why we voted for him.
Well, that's exactly
That's why I
right,
voted for him. Okay.
I don't care.
I don't care. That's right.
I don't care if he sends mean tweets.
That's right.
I don't care if he's bombastic.
That's
and
right.
Says things off the cuff.
You know,
says things that really don't make much sense.
Did he say some cringeworthy things? Sure.
Yes, he
you know, but I'm looking at the policies and the effects of those policies.
Same here.
And I really do believe that China and collaborators in this country engineered a lot of these things that are going on. Now, did they literally engineer the virus and let it loose? Don't know. You know, I mean, I don't know. But I have to entertain it because all the authorities that you just mentioned, they've lost their credibility.
Well, they have. They absolutely have lost their credibility. And, you know, the Chinese are not above doing this.
Oh,
you know, just think about it.
Look how they treat their own people.
The U.S. government did the same thing
Absolutely.
in San Francisco. They sprayed 13 biological agents in the streets of San Francisco back in the, I think it was the late 50s, early 60s, under an operation called Operation Sea Spray, to see how fast these biological
agents would disseminate?
Yes.
Right.
Disseminated throughout the
Well, wasn't there though?
People died and were sickened.
And there were the Tuskegee experiments. A lot. Look, people will. Yeah, and you can promise. Look, China views us as basically their number one, not competitor, not enemy.
Enemy.
Okay,
That's
so they would not
exactly right.
hesitate to visit something like that upon us if they could do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, we're out of time tonight. Enjoyed it. Hope you did. We'll be back next week for more America in Danger. I'm Robert Cressionnie.
I'm John Gatsis.
Good night. Have a good week.